Hi there. Welcome to your Love Talk. This is a place where everyday people can share their challenges and provide insights into how they were able to overcome them with love and grace for themselves. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, please remember to do so now and don't forget to like it. Thanks so much for your support. So today, I'm happy to introduce Kim-Monique Johnson. She is a recovering HR professional, as she calls it, who is now working as a leadership coach for executives and mid-managers who face challenges when leading during times of change. Kim-Monique helps people of color who desire to show up as their authentic selves, prioritize their well-being, and lead with empathy. Listen now to Kim-Monique's story. Hi, Kim-Monique. It's so nice having you on the Your Love Talk podcast today.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here with you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed and to just talk a little bit about your story. I know that you are, you called it a recovering HR professional. Love to
Yeah.
hear about that, as well as you are launching a podcast coming up in the summer. So talk
Yeah,
a little bit about what you do.
sure. Yeah. So yes, I refer to myself as a recovering HR professional, having been in the field of human resources for a long time, having worked in leadership roles in nonprofits for a long time. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I realized that it's not what I wanted to do, right? And it actually specifically was when a leadership coach, a Black woman leadership coach, asked me, "Well, what do you really want?" Right? Because I was in the role of human resources, and it's all about the organization and the people, and that on top of just being a Black woman in the world, right? Putting everybody else's needs first. And so I became a coach because I had a coach ask me, well, what do you want and what do you need? And
Mhm.
that's what I offer other Black women.
I love those two questions. What do you want and
Mm,
what do you need? And that can
mm,
go for anyone, just to be able to stop and ask themselves that question. And I truly believe that the pandemic allowed people to stop and
mm-hmm.
pause a little bit and really look at what they're doing. I've
Exactly.
seen people actually move to a whole nother state because they're like, I don't want to be here. This has allowed me
Yeah,
to move.
right,
So
right.
that's really amazing. So
Mhm.
what were the answers that came up for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, what sometimes it's easier to say what I don't want in order
Hmm.
to get to what I do want, right?
Yeah.
So I knew in that moment, it was actually even before the pandemic, I knew I no longer wanted to be a chief human resources officer, which I had been. That was the role that I was in. And I couldn't quite understand all the reasons why, right? It was a really good job. I worked with a great team. It was well paying. But the stress was just so much. And I began to think, well, that's a part of it, right? When you reach a certain status, when you become an executive, right? It's part of the job. But it was easy for me to basically say, I don't want this in order to open up, the avenue of what I really wanted. And
Mhm.
so what I found was when I said what I don't want, it allowed me to focus on what I did want, which was to be in service of other women who were like me, right? In those stressful roles, who just literally needed a break, right? A break for lunch, a break to go to the bathroom, right? It was like it was so challenging, and so I wanted to support others to be able to overcome some of those challenges and focus on themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, were you feeling stressed out before, but just because you were so busy, you didn't really realize it until you kind of stopped and paused?
Exactly, and it's like, the body tells you, right? Body
Mhm.
tells you what's going on, so paying attention. So I was literally on the train. I live on Long Island. I was working in Manhattan at the time in New York City, and we were about to bring in a new chief executive, a new senior executive to the team, and I just felt like the stress and pressure of making sure that everything was in place because everything wasn't. And some of that is something to unpack too, right? Needing things to be perfect, right?
Mm.
Um, but it wasn't in place, and I did feel the need to be perfect to have things right. Plus, I was the only Black woman on the leadership team, so I felt that pressure. And I remember, Dr. Beverly, being on the train and my stomach just being in knots. I was not able to go into that office. So I got off the train and got on the other track and came right back home and called in sick that day. Yeah. So to answer your question, it was the stress that I wasn't paying attention to, but my body certainly was.
Mhm. So did it how did it come out or come through your body? What, were you getting sick?
Yeah, so my stress lands in my shoulders and in my gut, right? So when my stomach was in knots, I just had to come home and yeah, take care because I wasn't going to be able to be in an office running back and forth to the bathroom. So it was physically having to come out of me. Yes.
Okay. So then is that what inspired you to, in that moment, find a coach to help you?
Yeah, a coach and a therapist actually. It was a therapist first. And what I realized in therapy was I had been depressed and didn't even know it, right? Because it was showing up as being irritable, as being frustrated, as I can't deal with this job and these people, and it was everybody else. When actually I learned that I was actually experiencing depression and it was turned inward, right? And the anger and frustration I had toward myself. So once I dealt with that, then I was able to engage in some other action items like, okay, well, now I know what I don't want, right? Let me focus on what I do want. And with that, I was engaging in different aspects of just investing myself with coaching and other like business conferences to help me focus on what I wanted.
Excellent, excellent. So you mentioned
Yes.
that this word, perfectionism. And
Yes.
a lot of people, me
Yeah.
included, struggle with perfectionism. So tell me
Mhm.
where that comes from for you.
Yeah, wow. Let me tie this to the recovering HR piece, right?
Okay.
Being in that role and feeling like I had to hold so much and be responsible for so much, right? Plus, being a Black woman in America, right? Feeling like you got to represent and represent the race,
Yeah.
represent with Black excellence, right? It was something that had been ingrained in me, right? It was what I was expected to always do well. And I was taught, I'm a woman of a certain age, right? That you've got to be twice, three times as good as your white counterparts, right? Because you're representing. So that's where some of that striving for perfectionism has come from. And I also realized that it's been a part of our these dominant norms that we've adopted, right? I can get into that maybe another conversation where the history of work environment, right, was not built for people to be able to, thrive and be a human being, right? So these stressful work environments come from, the vestiges of slavery. And so that was something that I knew I needed to reject because it was never going to be about me achieving, right? This so-called idea of perfectionism.
Right. So, Kim Monique, did that also come through as a child, the expectation that this is how you should be as a Black woman in America?
Yeah, yeah. My parents didn't pressure me that way, but the larger like cultural messages for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So while I didn't feel pressured, I certainly felt encouraged, right? So I grew up in a small town on Long Island, Wyandanch, New York. Shout out to one of the best MCs, Rakim from Wyandanch. But it was a red line school district, a red line district, and so the resources were not going into the school district. And so my parents sent me and my siblings to private school, predominantly white schools. So there was the sort of the implicit message that, we are expecting you to do well. And in order for you to do well, you know that sometimes you're going to have to outshine, right, the white kids in the school. Yeah.
Mm. That's so that's an interesting message, and it's a message that often, African Americans or Black people of color struggle with
Hmm.
too,
Hmm.
because sometimes, you're in your community schools and you don't have the proper resources, and then you go to, the parent sacrifice to put you in a private
Hmm.
school,
Hmm.
but then it's not, you're lacking diversity. And so you're
Yeah.
feeling like you gotta, work extra hard or twice as hard. And that's the message that, African
Yeah.
Americans struggle with anyway,
Hmm.
being here.
Right.
So how did
Right.
that
Right.
impact you?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It also relates to this idea of having to represent, right?
Yeah.
So not only working twice as hard,
Hmm.
but recognizing or feeling like people are looking at me and looking at the whole race, right? So
Yeah.
um, how I show up and how well I do is a reflection on what people think, and in particular, white people think how
Yeah.
other, Black girls are going to do. So is
Yeah.
that added pressure? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get to the place where you finally said, done? with working in this high pressure type of job
Mhm.
to where you are now?
Mm. Through, a lot of grace, right? Giving myself grace in terms of making the decision and recognizing it's okay to kinda have a hybrid experience, and that by that I mean, I left my full-time environment, and pursued independent coaching and consulting. And, sometimes that worked out for a while where it was just me, then sometimes I'd be invited to join an organization, right? So this is where I say grace comes in. So when we make a decision, we can sometimes, make a little bit of a course, correction, if you will, or we may, veer a little bit, as long as we still focus on the same goal. And so I would sometimes be working independently and sometimes working in an organization because sometimes it was a good opportunity, sometimes it was the right fit, as they say.
Mhm.
And so that allowed me the time to really, again, stay focused on what I wanted long term while not feeling like I was sacrificing my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health.
Excellent. You know, it's also hard for a lot of people when you have the secured position, even though you know you're stressed out, even though
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that, you know what, this is taking a toll on my health.
Yeah.
However, you know, to leave something that you know and you've been with for a long time to the
Yeah.
unknown can
Right.
be really scary. So
Yeah.
what helped you to be in
Mhm.
this place where you said, okay, you know what, whether it's financially, whatever it is that you were probably had to consider to
Yes.
move into something that, you know, coaching is something that you have to build.
Yes. 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 It was so much around, this feeling inside, like Toni Morrison talks about it. No, I think it's Maya Angelou who talks about if there is a book inside of you, right, or a project inside of you, I'm going to like extrapolate a little bit. If there's something on your heart, right, it's almost like you're just not going to feel right, unless you bring that out into the world,
Yeah.
And I felt like I just needed to, no matter what, stay focused on it. If I had to take a little bit of side steps here and there, that's okay. But the compelling reason for me to really feel like my purpose in life, right? Is to be of service, in particular with other Black women, other Black professionals, queer professionals like me. And so that was something that would just never go away. You know what I mean? So it's this gnawing thing. Like, I've got to do this. Yeah.
Love that.
Mhm.
And did you have support systems along the way to help you in this transition?
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to acknowledge that for sure. Right. So the idea that doing anything in isolation, right, or just putting your head down and getting things done is really a lie. Right. So it's been nurturing relationships, nurturing community along the way. Some of my closest colleagues and friends are the same people that I used to work with,
Mhm.
right? I saw that somewhere, I think an Instagram quote that some of your best friends are people that you met at a job that you not no, neither one of you still work at.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had those relationships and that has really been a part of my support system.
Excellent. So how do you then manage stress now?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I have several practices, and I'll just say that again, so for so many of us during the pandemic, we had to lean on, maybe even learn, adopt, try, or be more consistent with some of those self-care practices, right?
Mm.
And I'm just so grateful that I have continued to rely on them. So walking in the mornings, journaling, mindfulness practices, and now I'm on track to become a mindfulness meditation teacher as well, so I integrate that with my coaching.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
it's been wonderful. It's been
Mhm.
wonderful. And of course, bringing back the joy as well, not that it ever left, right? But when there are
Mhm.
some moments when it's most, stressful, it's reminding myself of joy, right? And
Mhm.
doing things that, make me smile, make me laugh, so there's that.
I love that. You
Yeah.
know, it is truly important to be in this place where you're able to reduce that stress level, you know, because we can be
Mhm,
moving, walking,
mhm.
you know, just living our lives, but then we don't have that internal joy. And it's
Yeah.
there, but we can't bring it out because we're in a place where we're not living our life on purpose,
Mhm,
with
mhm.
purpose
Right.
and fulfilling whatever that calling is. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you were able to actually recognize that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Again, it took time, right? And so for everyone out there, right, it's like there's this calling, right? When you slow down and listen to it, or when your body tells you, even if you're not slowing down, sometimes that's when it happens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just recognizing that it's there for a reason, you know? It's like, how come this thing is not going away? This calling I have to, be a life and leadership coach, hold retreats for women, Black women in particular. Like, why is this not going away? This idea of having a meditation session, right, with HR professionals who have back-to-back meetings. But can I get you for 5 minutes? She has to take a few breaths.
Yeah, yeah.
Or can I help you, like, create time in your day where you have time to think and you're not just in back-to-back meetings and doing all the thinking work after, 5, 6 o'clock when, the workday ends. And so, yeah, just paying attention to that calling um, has been so much for me.
I like that. And I always believe that when we are still,
Hmm.
that's when we receive the answers.
Yes.
When we are running
Yeah.
and we don't have time just to take a breath, like really just
Hmm.
breathe,
Yes.
that's when we don't really hear or know what our next steps are. We're just taking the step without
Yeah.
without intention.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. Being
Yeah.
still and slowing
Hmm.
down is really critical.
Sure. And to add to that too is being still, yes, and also being in movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of epiphanies and ideas and peace that come to me when I'm walking is
Mm-hmm.
just a gift, right? Like things
Mm-hmm.
will come when you are in movement rather than like, okay, I'm going to sit down at my desk and figure everything out.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I like that.
Yeah.
That's true. And actually, I love walking as well. And
Mhm.
you're in New York, so I guess it
Yeah.
gets cold during certain seasons.
That's,
But like this is the perfect season for me because I
mhm.
love going out and hearing the birds. Actually, just
Yes.
listening to the birds, right?
Yes.
And just looking at the trees, and even
Hmm.
if there's pollen,
Hmm.
and allergies, it's something that's really
Yeah.
rewarding about being out there and just experiencing God's nature.
Hmm.
And I love doing that.
Yeah, me too. Been another savior as well. And it's
Mhm,
amazing what can happen. And there's all kind of research around that, right? Around
mhm.
the physiological aspect of what happens when you're in nature,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. The trees are emitting what the plants are
Mhm,
giving you. Yeah.
mhm. Love that.
Hmm.
So, Kim Monique, what inspired you then to also work on starting a podcast?
Mm. I'm inspired because I know that one of the ways in which I connect with folks is through my conversation, right? So I have been a facilitator for a long time. It's quite natural for me to hold space and facilitate conversation, both in person and virtually. And so just seems like the perfect opportunity to kind of continue those conversations, right? And also to get some feedback, right? Like, how are folks feeling? What are people needing? And also to have some fun with it too. Like I
Mhm.
said, making sure we can remind ourselves of the joy. And so the name of the podcast, Ancestors and Aunties, it comes from my aunt. She's 80 years old, and she'd worked in government for a long time. And when I first told her about what I do as a consultant some time ago, she was like, "Oh, I know about you consultants. Y'all would always come in here talking about we're going to take things to the next level." And I would say, "Why don't y'all fix the level we on now? This level is broken. You want to go to the next level, you got to take care of this one first."
Yeah, that's true.
Through Auntie wisdom, I was like, you know what, Auntie, you ain't never lied. So let's pull out all of those gems, you know?
Love that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
when do you want to launch it?
I'm aiming for the summer. Yeah, yeah, I've got some things to put in place, but summertime is going to be the time.
I love that. Excellent.
Hmm.
So, Kim Monique, what are some of the lessons learned from your experience of being in this HR world and getting to the place where you realize that you had to find something different for you to
Hmm.
be able to live your life fully?
I love that question. Again, it was during the pandemic, when we were all like hunkered down and reaching for just so many things to keep us uplifted. And I came upon the 1619 project. And there I started to hear about so much in terms of what was the original foundations of how, again, capitalism and work environments and business management had started. And when I heard the discussion by Dr. Rosenthal, and her research talks about the origins of slavery um, still being manifest in workspaces today, right? And it stopped me in my tracks because everything that I was doing as an HR professional, and shout out to HR professionals, it's not to demean, it's just to recognize, right, some of the things that we weren't even aware of, these vestiges of, how work environments were so brutal and how they were basically designed for the plantation
Yeah.
has been passed down to us, right? And so some of these policies and some of these procedures that we inherited can be harmful. So one example, right? It's like some of these non-compete agreements that if you agree to work for an organization, you have to sign something that says, you won't work for XYZ organization for X number of years afterward. I mean, that's kind of binding people to a particular situation, right? That could deny them their own economic, right, freedom. But where does that come from, right? I mean, there's a whole history of tracking people and making sure they don't leave a particular uh, plantation. Quote, this wasn't employment, right? But that's what it looks like now, right? Making sure people are tied to a particular thing. And that's just one example. So to answer your question, when these things start to really become apparent to me, and I started to really think about, wow, what are the ways in which we are inadvertently perpetuating harm, right? Then that really needed me to take a step back and want to do something different.
Mm. And that's interesting. So even looking at the HR world,
Yeah.
and you realize that there's some policies that are in place that
Mhm.
will, it's almost like this divide,
Yeah.
marginalized people.
Right.
What do you think should be done differently for change to happen?
Yeah,
Big
so a lot
question.
there. Right, right, right. Because what I didn't say also, what I'm recovering from is being a DEI practitioner, right? Doing the diversity, equity, inclusion work. And part of, again, what we want to do with all good intentions is, especially after George Floyd was murdered and everybody was putting out, solidarity statements for Black people, uh, having these conversations about race and racism and inequity in the workplace, in some cases, was doing more harm, particularly for Black and Brown people and marginalized people, right? Because we were already stressed, we were already faced with this, and now, if not done carefully, it can re-traumatize, right? And so, what I needed to do was to step back from all of that and offer the antidote, right? Which is what I do with my life coaching and what I want to do with podcasting and helping people to get that support when they're in these spaces, either facilitating or doing all the things as a HR person, right? Or having to like be at the effect of that because, these are all the things that people want to talk about in the workplace now.
So wasn't going to go
Mhm.
there, but I
Yeah.
have to do a follow-up question because,
Yeah.
we're going through this
Yeah.
transition in our society.
Hmm.
And you mentioned DEI.
Hmm.
There's a lot of changes happening that's impacting people of color.
Yes.
Um, what do you recommend, especially people who are impacted? What do you recommend
Yeah.
in terms of how people should proceed if they're being impacted by all of this?
Goes back to what you said or what we said earlier about the stress. I'm not remembering the sister's name, so I'm going to need to look her up. But there is someone who talks about the importance for Black women in particular to eliminate stress. And she said, I don't mean reduce, I don't mean manage. She's like eliminate, get rid of that stress that is killing us, right? Because we know what stress can do to the body. We know how it relates to poor health outcomes. And so I don't mean to suggest that everyone or any person in a work environment just get up and leave because it's stressful. That's not real. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is to the extent that you can protect yourself, right? Do that. So, what do I mean? I remember I was facilitating a session, and it was a largely white group, and there were two Black women, and they wanted to talk about structural racism. They wanted to talk about, what they could do as an organization. They also wanted to talk about individual racism, internalized racism, deep, deep stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then they have to go to work the next day, right? Or later that afternoon. So the two Black women in this virtual session, Dr. Beverly, they stayed off camera. And I totally supported that, right? I was like, take care of yourself. Private chat, stay off camera if you need to. I get it. So the lesson in that is I want folks to do what they can, where they can, to take care of themselves, to try to eliminate that additional stress that's related to everything around, what's going on around DEI or anti-racism in the workplace, right? Take care of yourself, because the organization can't take care of you, right? Yeah.
That's a good lesson
Mm.
or good recommendations, being able to eliminate stress as much as possible. It's
Mhm.
easy for us all, including myself, to carry that stress, and we can
Mhm.
sense it within our bodies.
Yes.
And to be able to be in that place where we're saying, okay, you know what? It's almost like I call it a place of surrender.
Mm. Mhm.
That's the word that's been
Yeah,
coming to me this year, being in a place
yeah,
of surrender, because there's some things that we can control, some things we cannot.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
And some things we
yeah.
cannot control. And even with all the things that's going on now, it's
Mhm.
easy to be in this place of worry and,
Yeah. Mhm.
uncertainty because the
Mhm.
unknown. And
Right,
sometimes it feels chaotic, right? But
right.
being able to find that sense of peace within yourself and finding those anchors,
Yeah.
whether those are just to be able to be okay is so critical.
So critical. And for us too, right? It's time for us to say, no, I'm not taking that on. Because so many of us, of course, right,
Yeah.
want things to be better. And so we may volunteer or be voluntold, right, to lead this DEI committee or,
Mhm.
to be on the committee and be on this work group. And I'm saying to Black folks, unless that's your job, just politely say no, right? Unless you really want to, but to protect your peace, for that exact reason that it is an added toll, an added burden for many of us. So it was for me. I'll speak for myself, and so that's when I knew I needed to step back.
Yeah. One of the things that was important for me is to be able, because I used to work for government, to be able to
Hmm.
leave government because I
Hmm.
felt like I couldn't really have any real serious impact on change. Some
Yeah.
things that I saw that I felt like, okay,
Hmm.
it should be dealt differently. But then, as much as I tried and wrote
Hmm.
reports and had
Yeah.
meetings, from my
Hmm.
level, I realized that I really could not see the changes because of the bureaucracy, right?
Right.
So
Hmm.
starting my own practice was something that was so important for me because then I was able to then look at how do I want to show up? How do I want my
Yeah.
business to show up? And then
Hmm.
to be able to put things in place because that's when I
Hmm.
felt like I had a little bit more, I had more control over how things, you know, will turn out in the end,
Yeah.
and hiring the people that I need that's got the similar vision, right?
Hmm.
And helping to
Hmm.
guide them and fulfilling my purpose and why I'm here.
I
So
love
being able
that.
for you to do that, to be able to say,
Hmm.
okay, you know what, this is what I can do. I can coach other people,
Hmm.
to be able to be in a
Hmm.
place where they are finding their purpose and not feeling that they, have to be in this place where they have to, try to make change of things that they don't have any control over,
Right.
but have
Yeah.
control over their own destiny. So
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I actually met with my coach yesterday, and we were talking about, creating from a place of choice, right? You always have choice.
yeah.
So where those other work environments, even when I have, again, great relationships, work with great people, it's the work environment itself that, it's a system itself, right?
Hmm.
And so now I get to create a different system, right? I
Yeah.
get to write the job description that says, you're able to slow down, know when you're feeling stress. You're able to check in with your body and talk with, your team and your manager about what you need versus able to work in a fast-paced environment, right? No.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important, to be able
Yeah.
to say, let's put in some time to breathe. Let's put
Yeah.
in some time for self-care. Let's
Yes.
not overwork yourself because it's easy to have those expectations of
Hmm.
yourself because you think people are expecting you to do that because you've been in an environment where that was the
Hmm.
expectation, right? So it's almost like a
Yeah.
reversal in your brain of
Yes.
how to do things differently so that you can show up in a way that is more healthy and whole.
Exactly. Exactly. I had the opportunity to write an article for a nonprofit quarterly that talked about that very aspect of what we can do differently. Again, based on flipping, right, where the roots of our work environment come from, right, enslaving Black bodies,
Yeah.
what we can do, to be the antidote for that as a way of, caring for ourselves and our own liberation.
I love that. So, Kim Monique, what is next for you beyond
Ah,
the podcast?
Be on the podcast. Yes. Yeah, so I'm building community again with these women who, again, I was once that person. Any Black woman out there in a human resources role, whether you're chief executive or mid-level, doing the things right for the organization. Plus, you feel like you have to put everybody else's needs before your own. No time to think. I literally had someone I remember at work one day follow me into the bathroom and say, "Did you get my email?" You
Mhm,
know?
mhm,
So I'm talking to any Black woman out there in an HR leadership role who feels this kind of pressure, who
mhm,
is having difficulty caring for herself and prioritizing her own self, having difficulty even knowing what self-care means.
mhm.
I want to build a community with those folks so that we can come together and be in support for each other. And then be on a retreat together, right? Think of it as a retreat as like not quite a full-on vacation where you're just like totally luxuriating, and and not quite like group therapy,
Yeah,
but somewhere in the middle, right?
right.
We're relaxing with each other, we're really supporting each other and releasing some of that stress and some of the challenges that we're facing in our roles.
I love that. So are you actually seeing women virtually or a combination of virtual and in person?
Mm, primarily virtually.
Okay.
And what I'd like to move to is that in-person retreat.
Okay.
Hmm.
Excellent. So is there a plan for the retreat in terms of dates?
Oh, thank you for that. I'm thinking of two things. One is asking women what they need and what would be great timing for them, right? Because I know summertime might not be the best in terms of family vacations and all. So I'm thinking around the fall, so either fall of this year or fall of next year. So I have time to really understand what folks need and designing the retreat to meet those needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So how do people find you?
Oh, thank you. So folks can find me through my website, which is innervisionscoaching.com. Innervisions, yes, named after the Stevie Wonder album. It's part of my joy, Stevie Wonder and music. Innervisionscoaching.com, or I'm on Instagram at K-Monique
Excellent. Kim-Monique, I want to thank you so much for being here today and just to share your insights about the HR world and how you recovered, and recovering from
Recovering.
it,
Yeah.
recovering from it,
Yes.
and being able to help other people. So appreciate just your presence and just your calmness. They have this very
Oh,
calmness and peace around you. So thank you so much
oh.
for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And again, shout out to all the HR professionals, right? Because I can imagine the difficulties that they're facing right now. So I'm happy to be able to be a support. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim-Monique, for sharing your inspiring story, reminding us of the power of introspection. Prioritizing our mental, physical, and spiritual well being to reduce stress is vital. I truly appreciate your authenticity and your dedication to empowering others to embrace their true selves. I will leave you with 3 affirmations from my Love Talk affirmation card deck. The first is, I receive clarity when I am silent. The second is, I affirm myself daily as an act of love for myself. And the third is, I am whole because my mind, body, and spirit are restored. Please remember to visit yourlovetalk.com to purchase the Love Talk affirmation and couples card deck and my book, Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. To follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please visit Dr. Beverly Booth. If you have enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. This is Dr. Beverly from Your Love Talk. Blessings.